Good afternoon, and welcome to the February 24th work session of the Board of Education of Charles County. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all again. As I always do, I will take a moment to read the mission of the Board of Education of Charles County. The mission of Charles County Public Schools is to provide an opportunity for all school-age children to receive an academically challenging, quality education that builds character, equips for leadership, and prepares for life in an environment that is safe and conducive to learning. All right. Next up, we have the recognition of the resolution which deals with Social and Emotional Learning Week. All right, who do we have accepting, please? Welcome. Yeah. Yeah, Ms. Brennan is running over. Hi. All right, welcome, everyone. Oh, please, welcome. Stand right up here.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. You could, yes. Please introduce yourselves and then come up here to accept.
Okay.
No, Dr. Blanchard.
So I'm
Yes.
Dr. Mike Blanchard. I'm the Director of Student Services at Charles County Public Schools. We want to thank all the board members. Dr. Navarro, I'm sorry.
If you can introduce.
Yes,
In
please.
addition today, with us today are
Jamie Heath, school counselor, and Mary B. Neal.
Hi, Bella Lugo, Behavioral Mental Health Coordinator.
Yes, ma'am.
Bill Marcioni, school counselor at Piccowax Middle School.
The incredible
Oh.
counselor at
Oh,
Piccowax.
thank you. You forgot all your adjectives. Can I please ask you all to just come up here and join us?
And just face that
Just
way.
face that, yeah. So people can see your
Sorry.
shining faces.
We didn't do a run through with you guys. You guys are like, what are we supposed to do? And then we'll read the resolution.
Yes.
And then we'll take pictures.
As you notice, student services personnel are very flexible.
Yes.
I appreciate the pivot, Dr. Blanchard. Resolution, Board of Education of Charles County, Social Emotional Learning Week, March 3rd through the 8th, 2025. Whereas Social Emotional Learning, SEL, is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Teaching SEL competencies prepares today's students to be tomorrow's leaders. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County recognizes that SEL competencies are first taught at home, developed throughout our lives, and are essential to succeed in the school, the workplace, at home, and in the community. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County also recognizes that teaching SEL competencies helps today's student be safe, skilled, and ready to learn. And whereas extensive research shows that SEL interventions that address the 5 core competencies, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, increased academic performance by 11 percentile points, improved students' ability to manage stress, and improve attitudes about self, others, and school. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County further recognizes that investments in evidence-based SEL programs create safer and more supportive classrooms by decreasing school dropout rates by 5 to 12%, decreasing physical aggression, and decreasing bullying. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County acknowledges that a vast majority of parents supporting teaching these skills, vast majority of parents support teaching these skills in schools, especially since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County further acknowledges that top companies are emphasizing the importance of social and emotional skills, such as self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making for success in the next generation of employees and entrepreneurs. And whereas research shows that investments in evidence-based SEL programs can lead to improved educational achievement and long-term benefits to society. And whereas the Board of Education of Charles County acknowledges that cost-benefit research shows that for every dollar spent on SEL, there is an $11 return on investment. And be it resolved that the Board of Education of Charles County endorses the recognition of the week of March 3rd through 8th as Social Emotional Learning Week, and encourages all community members to learn about and share their knowledge of the importance and impact of integrating evidence-based SEL into our schools, organizations, workplaces, and communities. And therefore, be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be inserted in the minutes of the February 24th, 2025 Board Work Session. By order of the Board of Education of Charles County, this 24th day of February, 2025. Dr. Maria Navarro, Superintendent of Schools, Yanel Morley Esquire, Chairperson. Okay, stay put for me, please. Just stand between you.
Scoop together. Yep. Smiles, look here. Take a few in case we close our eyes. One more.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Listen, you
All the
got
adjectives.
3
Take 'em.
customers from up here, so kudos to you.
Absolutely.
Middle schoolers.
It is not easy.
God bless you.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have the audit report, which I believe will be Ms. Karen Acton and Ms. Sherry Fisher-Davis, and as well as our auditors. Welcome you all. Let me see. So we have Ms. Carol Kohler, I hope I'm saying it correctly, our accounting manager, and Mr. Bill Early, the principal for CLA. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. I want to take a minute and thank my staff and Bill and his staff. This was really tough. As everyone knows, it's been delayed. We worked as hard and as fast as we could, but when you have a new system, lots of things change. I also like to thank the board for their patience as we finally got this. But here's
thank
Mr.
you.
Bill Early, our auditor, who will present the audit to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Early.
Thank you, Karen. I also do want to take a pleasure to thank Karen and her staff. The reason I usually am here in October, I'm here in February this year. Although it didn't feel like,
little late.
it actually didn't feel like winter actually today when driving down. It did feel like fall. But as you may be aware, the Board of Education implemented a new ERP system over the past, feels like forever, but 2 years, I would say. It's been a long process. The decision was made very early on to not have a dedicated implementation team, but rather to have those who do their daily task in the accounting department, the finance department, to also be part of the implementation, working with the implementers and everything. So that does strain the audit process, cause delays in financial reporting at times, which we did see this year. So unfortunately, I do have to say your audit was not issued by 9:30, which is required by the MSDE. So it did go out. We issued on Friday, and it has been sent to the state now. And again, the reason was really this system implementation. So I want to assure all the board members that, and the superintendent sitting up here today, that it was not an indication of any wrongdoing, any illegal activity, any fraudulent activity. It was merely a timing issue. And a being stretched very thin by the finance department, and a change in processes. Anytime you implement a new system, you analyze your processes, you go through. If you're going to put in a new system and not change processes or not change anything, then why are you doing it, essentially? So there was a lot of evaluating the processes, making changes to how things were done, how things were recorded. You've been blessed to have some of these finance staff here for a very long time. However, they were also very used to how the process was. So they had to get used to the new process and develop some of the new processes. So that took some additional time. Then us as auditors, we had to go through a different process of auditing it, right? So requesting just last year, we could say, hey, give us report, I'll just say number 51. Well, that's not report 51 anymore. That's now called a different title. It's not even called a number, essentially, anymore. So
Doesn't even exist.
It didn't even exist. The implementers hadn't got to it yet. So we had to wait for that to be implemented. So a lot of those things caused some of the delays in the audit process. But I'm happy to be here before you today reporting out the results of the audit. And I'll go through the financial statements as well as the letter of required communication to governance, which you all as the board are governance. I'll walk through and highlight some of that information. The very first thing is the financial statements. They are the responsibility of management, Karen and her team. The only thing in here that CLA does prepare is actually on pages 1, 2, and 3, which is the independent auditor's report. I will note that there is an emphasis of matter opinion in here due to it's called a correction of error, but when we were going through and looking at the grants process and the restricted funds, we did notice as they were implementing some of the process changes, there was some old information that should have been changed and should have been recorded in previous years. So the way accounting standards work, you don't just record it in this year, you actually have to go back and the new accounting standards, actually GASB 100 requires you to go back and restate previous years to make sure that they were correct. So we did note that this year in our audit report that we did have that. And I'll get into that further when I go through some of the findings that we had this year, which is actually on page 6. Which is the next thing that I'll go ahead and highlight is we did, unfortunately this year, we do have 2 material weaknesses to report. And material weaknesses are internal control deficiencies, I guess you'd say. So one was the improper deferral of revenue. Again, and as we were going through and noticing it, the process changed this year. We kind of went into that account, and as we were trying to reconcile it and work with Carol and Sherry going through it, we noticed some things that were older, should have been recognized in the past because they're truly not restricted revenues by an outside party. They're actually internally restricted, and when they're internally restricted, you go ahead and recognize those revenues as you receive them. So we had to go back and recognize those in previous years, which basically changed the fund balance amounts for the restricted program. We've actually talked to Karen. Karen and I were actually talking upstairs about taking anything in the restricted fund that is not externally restricted by either external grant providers or by MSD and moving that over into the general fund to clean up that restricted fund for truly what it says it is just restricted activity. The other one we had was when testing, we did find some what we call payable invoices. They're invoices from outside vendors that came in. In order to do the financial statements in a timely manner, there's usually a threshold at which you cut off. Because the audit was delayed this year, we were able to extend our procedures. We have to extend our procedures further and look for any invoices that came in. So basically they came in later in the fall, and we had to accrue them back into the fiscal year, FY24. But because it were found during the audit, they do actually go into the report as an auditor adjustment, essentially. So we had to go through and make sure that those were recorded. So while it does say material weaknesses, it was to correct how things should properly be recorded so that they are properly shown now. A couple highlights I'll go through in the actual financial statements. Sheriff, if you go to page 18 for me. This is the unassigned fund balance. Basically means what's left over, what is not. There's 3 levels of fund balance, and I'll highlight that footnote further on. But they're committed, which is outside parties, assign, and by the board, assign, which management side, and then you get what's left over. It's called our unassigned fund balance. You typically, in the management discussion analysis, there's always been an analysis of where do we plan to spend our unassigned fund balance, and it's usually on the health insurance, the contingency reserve, and then anything left over goes into the capital technology reserve line is typically how you show it. I know it's a very large report. If by chance you do, say, what should I read in here? If you read management's discussion analysis, while it is unaudited, it is basically management's analysis of a year-to-year comparison for the financial statement. So it's a very kind of brief, high-level summary. So if anything, that's where I would take the time to read, and it has some summary information on the financial statements in there. So, which I'll highlight as I continue to go through here. Page 24. So the financial statements you prepare, I know there's some new board members, so you do it on 2 bases. One is called full accrual or entity-wide, as if you were a company. All your liabilities and everything are dumped in. And then you also have your modified accrual budgetary statements, essentially. Page 24 shows if you were a company, that would be everything that's all your future liabilities, so your pension liabilities, your other post-employment liabilities, and everything are shown being booked there. So you'll see those as you go through on page 24. And I'm going to highlight a little bit of what that pension and OPEB amounts are, because those are some of the largest liabilities that you do have. You do, on page 25, There you do see, we did have that line, that's a restatement, but this is basically your income statement as if it was entity-wide, so all full accrual basis as if you were a business. And I say that because these are required by government accounting standards, however, that you do more of a budget is what you base your management decisions on, so I'll highlight those, but these are required statements, so you can see in there how things changed during the year. Next, on page 26, that's more of your modified accrual statement. That is your actual balance sheet, as you see it there, for all the funds that you have, the general fund, restricted programs fund, food service, and capital projects. I would say, those of you who are new, I'd stand up here probably 5 or 6 years ago, and the food service fund continued to show a loss every year, but that's doing very well. A lot of it during COVID, there was so much funding pumped into food service for free and reduced students that has a very healthy fund balance as we continue to move forward. Fast forwarding to page 54. On page 54, so the Board of Education, as the teachers, are part of the state retirement system, but then you also have your own pension plan system. Very healthy, I will report. You'll see there on page 54 that the pension is 90% funded. So that is a very high number. And again, that number does change based on market year-to-year results, but that is a positive number and a good investment. However, I will go over to page 59, and the not so good news is the OPEB. I will say it is better than it has been in the previous years, but the OPEB is the other post-employment benefits that you provide to your staff. That is 16% funded currently. So there's always a question of how should that be. That's been a question of some board members in the past. Again, I leave that up to you as board members to say, where should we spend the money? As you know, I know you're going through budget, with the county, with the state. Budgets are tight, so do I say, hey, you should be dumping any money in here? That's not my call to make. I'm just here to present the information so that you have it and are aware of how large those liabilities are getting. Page 71, this is the fund balance that I talked about. And again, this is the different levels you have. There you can see what's restricted as committed. And that's committed, again, that's by either outside sources or based on board policies. And then assigned is basically based on management's decisions or internal policies that you may have that you could change at will. And then you see the unassigned fund balance there. So that is what your fund balance is, and those tie back to the face of the financial statements. The next page, that is where we have our note. I will just highlight it because typically it is something you don't see in financial statements, but that was the restatement that we had regarding that restricted fund when we dug into some of those restricted revenues, and that they should have been recorded in some previous years. So, and then moving over, I will highlight page 83. This is, I know it's all the way in the back. That's where they put it under General Accounting Standards, but this is your budget to actual statement. So as you can see, your revenues did come out as a positive variance as well as your expenditures for the year. So after all was said and done, there was a $13 million positive swing, and that's really a result of savings for the most part of expenses not spent. So bringing, comes down to an ending fund balance on a budgetary basis for you all. The next thing I'll go through and highlight briefly is the required communication with governance. And then again, that's just my notes to you all as governance of the board. So within the financial statements, there are estimates. Those are subject to change every year. Most of your estimates are related to those pension and OPEB, which I highlighted during the year. The only difficulty we had during our audit was the delays we were having with the getting reports and the system implementation. And again, I just want to reiterate, it was more due to the new system and the new process being put in place than any other challenge that was had. As far as correcting misstatements, we did have some to accounts payable, as I mentioned, and to AR, as I mentioned. We did not have any disagreements with management over accounting policies or procedures. They did not seek opinions from any other auditors, and they did provide us with a management representation letter to us saying everything they told us was truthful and accurate to the best of their knowledge at the end of our audit. Again, with that said, we have issued the financial statements now. A copy has been sent to MSDE and to the county so that they can issue their financial statements. As a component of the county, you do roll up into their financial statements With that said, I will turn it over to you all and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Early. The first question is, for the benefit of the public, because it was, and of course, due to the system, submitted late, are there any penalties?
So any penalties would have been applied by this MSDE to any payments received from them. So I'll let Karen answer that question.
So yes, they did withhold money from our January payment, but
Okay.
now that we've submitted the audit, we should get it back on the next payment.
Okay, and I remember you discussed it,
So
I
there's
think
no
at the
permanent-
last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to follow up on that. All right. Starting this way, any questions, Ms. Bella Washington?
Yes. Thank you so much.
No, you can go ahead, and if
No,
you
I
have
said no.
anything,
No,
you
I said
good?
no. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one question, and I'm going to direct this to Karen. And I do see that you have a trust with the MAID. And I was wondering, have we thought about our own, like an individual universal life insurance where they have the 5 stocks that they that money goes into, and the school system as a whole could use that money to be able to give, better benefits for our employees, and also to be able to have, like maybe a key person where you can have something on them, so if they change over, you have money to pay them. So it won't be a constant as we're using all the funds that we're getting from the 2 sources we have. So we'll be able to have some reserve for ourselves to be able to look to the future, and we'll be better prepared. Because I don't know if some schools do it, but I know in Georgia we have like 2 schools that don't do that. So I was wondering here, have we thought about that or could do that?
So our pension funds and our OPEB are invested with MABE, with GYL. Well, they're not GYL anymore. They've changed their name. But we do have an investment company that advises us on that. And as far as cash on hand, that is invested by Carol's group, but it's in banks, and we earn interest on that. We don't have that because it's a cash flow issue. We need to have the cash available to be able to, fund our, we don't have any to put in the investment. Anything you want to add to that?
Right. I mean, our interest was very, very high, which really was part of why we have this fund balance. And that's because we are moving the money when it comes in and pushing it back out to our general bank account just in time to pay the bills when they're due. So we're constantly moving money back and forth in those investment accounts that, and it's an investment policy that we file that is under the county government. But we do have several accounts that earn high interest with some of the banks. MABE is, for the OPEB, and they also are investing that money, as Karen said. And then our pension is we have people that are in charge of investing that for us, because we don't have that kind of knowledge of, what to buy and those kind of things. But, we meet with them, and, they keep, then we also have actuaries that keep an eye on how much our investments are, so that we have enough money. Like he said, we're 90% funded for our pension fund.
Thank you.
So we try to earn extra money when we can. Yeah.
Well, the interest rates are high. We like it, but
Yeah.
as they fall.
But
Some things, right.
it's one of those things you can't count on, so you can't really
Tie it up.
tie it up to your budget, because it may not be there, next year, but.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions, Mr. Burke? No?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Any questions? Okay, we'll start with Ms. Thomas, and we can just make our way down.
Thanks. Thank you for this presentation. Karen, as you know, Ms. Acton, I'm always on your side because I understand the difficulty of being the implementer and doing your day job, right? So kudos to your staff for doing that and still coming up with a pretty clean audit, considering you had to do change management, business process reengineering, logistics and, coding and configuration of an entire system, right? So kudos to you for that.
Thank you for that.
But I do have a question about the material weaknesses and the internal controls. So did you all find, or do you anticipate, as you move forward with the maturity of the system, that you'll need to improve some additional internal controls, right? Because that's how you find mismanagement or issues, and then you're able to rectify those with either configuration or policy changes. So do you have a list of those ongoing as you mature in the system that you have identified, and or do you expect to see those? So that next year when we get through this audit, it's a little easier because you have cleaned those things up.
So to answer the question, yes. I mean, we have already made changes, and we will continue to make changes based on, what we discovered during the audit. The challenge in being prepared for this audit was the many problems that we had with Oracle throughout the year. I mean, I'm just being honest, right? So, we were chasing our tails to get the day-to-day work done and didn't have as much time to review the processes and change them. So as painful as this audit was, and it was really, really painful.
Can imagine.
Oh, yeah. It's painful.
Dr. Navarro was going to send out some surveys on, if there's any suggestions from your staff about what you could do better as a leader. I'm like, please don't send that out. You would not like to hear. It was not pretty, was it?
No, no.
But we've learned a lot. We have a good staff, and it will be better from here.
Okay. So thanks for that. I guess my only thing is, as we move forward in the future, I really want to keep the pulse on what the internal controls are and how we make those changes, and not just, keeping abreast of it because you need to make the change, but I'm pretty sure you can attest to the pain that you went through trying to unravel something with someone who's no longer here, who coded something in the system that you don't understand, is causing a glitch that's causing overpayments or underpayments, et cetera, et cetera. So just keeping a list of that somewhere so that as the system evolves and as, dare I say, Oracle gets themselves together, right? Yes. You still have the ability to continue to keep that configuration fresh so that you don't have challenges as whatever happens at the state level changes for finances, like you can still keep that fresh. So that's good to know. That's the only questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
I just want to point out, one of the things that I'll remind the board is in the budget that I submitted to come forward, there is a couple of Oracle-based positions. And sometimes, when we're having tough economic times and so forth, we forget that this is also over $500 million organization that has a whole bunch of systems and infrastructures of management. We deal with almost 4,000 employees. We're dealing with a lot of retirees, and like you just heard Carol talk about, we do invest and have a whole bunch of investment portfolios that we happily get on a call every quarter and talk about our process. So I do believe and I do acknowledge that we are working many, many hours. These are the folks that during winter vacation make sure that everything happens, payroll happens and so forth. These folks, I just want to publicly say, are here many, many weekends. And to make this happen, one of the reasons why my non-negotiable is that some of these Oracle positions need to come into the systems no matter what happens, is that we do not have all the people that we need to run this level of an organization. And so we are going to slowly build up to what we need to, but there is infrastructure within our systems of management that need to be built up. And so I just want to publicly say thank you, because you guys, this was very, very, very difficult, and it was very time consuming. And that's partially why we're trying to bring additional expertise so that their teams can function appropriately.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro, for that. I mean, as you all know, I have lots of experience in doing these, and typically you spend, companies are spending $30 million just on implementation. That is separate from the people that are doing the work. But it is a best practice to try to have your in-house expertise to control costs for future configurations. So that is a best practice, and I'm glad to see we're leaning in that direction so that you can kind of split the difference between what it costs for implementation, O&M cost, as well as for, future configuration and being able to be nimble for emerging needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything, Ms. Brenda Thomas? No. Okay. Okay, sure. Ms. Jamila Smith?
Certainly. Yes, thank you for the presentation. Thank you both. Always appreciate hearing from my colleague, Ms. Thomas, especially around HRIT or business process reengineering. So thank you for your earlier statements. Had three questions for you both. In terms of the material weaknesses that were identified, I know it's typical for auditors to identify those weaknesses and make the recommendations, and then the entity would then have a corrective action plan of sorts that explains sort of going forward how you're going to strengthen your internal controls or just roughly ensure that this doesn't happen for future audits. What is the timeline for developing said corrective action plan?
So we've already started that process as I was trying to explain, and maybe I'm not being very clear about it. As we discovered the errors, the accounts payable issue, quite honestly, is, I'm just going to be honest, that's really difficult for us to control because it's coming from outside of accounting, right? It's we don't have those invoices, so that is something that's hard. That's an education process that I need to continue to work on with SLT so that they know, when the year-end cutoff is, that they have made sure all of their invoices are in. So that one is that's really hard for us to control with us being as decentralized as we are. As far as the deferred revenue issue, Sherry met with her staff on Friday and has started a process with them to review the grants. As Bill said, we are going to move the grants that are not restricted out of restricted into the operating fund, which will make things better. It quite honestly was a change in process from the way the I-Series handled grants versus how Oracle handled grants. And this was a huge undertaking for us. It just really was. So what happened is, even on Carol's side, there was so much that we didn't know how it was going to be handled in Oracle. And until you get to that point of closing out the year and looking at the purchase orders and reviewing it, you don't know that you need to change something. And, I think our implementation, the AST, they did a stellar job, but the amount of information that this staff here had to absorb was not humanly possible. I mean, it just really wasn't to get it all. So we missed a few, but we will make sure that they're corrected.
No, and I think the phrasing of the auditor and sort of listening to the language and kind of reading between the lines, recognizing that it was inevitable just given the changes in the system and how kind of massive the undertaking was. And the material weaknesses do not seem to be very deep or concerning, but just learning as we go and what changes we can make for the next round just to ensure that we've addressed what we can address.
Right.
My second question is just around OPEB. If you can explain a bit more, you said that we were only funding to the kind of 60% level. I'm curious what the risk is for not funding more. Like, what's the risk for kind of remaining at that 60%?
Yeah, 16.
16
is the number.
Yes, I had that same question.
Okay.
So, yeah. So,
That's even more interesting.
what is the risk? I mean, the risk is obviously that there is going to be long-term liabilities that you're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
How are those going to be funded long-term is the real risk. Currently, you, like most school districts within the state of Maryland, within the country for that matter, are doing it on a pay-go basis. Pensions have been around for decades, right? So everybody knew, and pensions were very common in the outside public world as well for public companies. So people knew the importance of funding those. OPEB was a new concept when they introduced that liability of saying, hey, you have this projected long-term liability that you're going to pay health insurance for those that retire from your organization at whatever rate, whether it's 50% or 80% for some if they've been here for years. So really, it's the risk is that how is that going to be funded down the road, and how does that impact other things that you can fund down the road? It is a liability that everybody's dealing with, not just school systems, but every government is dealing with. I'm here to let you know that, hey, that's a long-term liability. How do you're like, how do we adjust it without putting cash into it? Well, that's during your negotiations with the bargaining units or setting policies. Is it something you want to continue to offer to employees? A lot of school districts, governments change their policies, right? So they used to say, if you've been here, we're still going to honor that, but for new people, we're only going to give X percentage of their health insurance when they retire.
Right.
So that's, that's something you can do about it. So, but again, that's your guys' decision. I want to tell you how to spend the money.
Yeah.
But that is the long-term effects. It's eventually eventually going, will it be in our lifetime? Maybe not, but it's going to be there at some point, so.
May I ask a clarifying
one-
question?
I'm sorry, I was just going to add that our hope with changing to the Medicare Advantage plan for our retirees, that our retiree health costs will go down. That's certainly our hope. And, we'll see how that goes, which would help that percentage.
And if I could clarify, so it doesn't necessarily mean we can't pay it year after year. It means that we just couldn't pay it all today. Am I understanding correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a long-term, consider it like a mortgage, right? Like
Yeah.
you're
So
paying
if-
it,
yeah, if
you're
they called the
you're
note.
current on your payments.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to have a
Pay it
job
for
to
the
pay
next-
that mortgage down the road.
Absolutely.
Whatever years.
So you have to have a source of income to pay that.
Okay.
So, and if I can go back, Ms. Smith, to answer some of you, to add on to some of what Karen said, with the material weakness for the understatement of accounts payable, that is very common that we see in the capital projects fund for a lot of governments. Reason being is the invoices come into the capital team, the construction people get them, they sit, the architect has to approve it, the engineer might have to sign off. So it takes a while for it to actually get into the accounting records before it can actually be processed and paid. And sometimes if you have if you don't have a lot of projects going on, what we said our materiality is, it's gonna be rather low, so we may have just picked up that invoice. So there's probably been ones in the past, but we've been able to pass on it, where this year we weren't able to pass on it due to threshold. But that's very common, not just here, in a lot of governments, is in the capital projects fund. As far as the corrective action plan that you mentioned, so I will say the formal one that we have to get in writing from Karen and her team will have to go with your single audit that is due to the state. So once we complete that, which we're trying to get completed within the next short few weeks here, by the end of the next month, that will have to include the formal written out plan of who's responsible, what is the time frame,
Right.
and everything, so that MSD and the feds can contact whoever they'd want to contact for that. So I would assume you all would get a copy of that as well. And then we will come in next year and we will test that as well, to say, is it fully implemented? Is it partially implemented? Is it a repeat? If it is a repeat, I don't think it would be. It's hard to say. I will say we haven't had a material weakness or any kind of finding in several number of years, so knock on wood, we don't have them again. But we will test it next year as part of our audit requirements.
And that's something you would also include in next year's report in terms of the status of that corrective action and how
Yes,
far.
and then it will go in the single
the
audit, but for the
agency is.
financial audit, when I report out, I can make a note to say, hey, this is where we're seeing it, and this is what, there's progress. And then, Dr. Navarro, last time you mentioned Oracle positions. I will also say, and I talked briefly with Karen, is also maybe, I think Karen put some positions in there to bolster up the accounting department as a whole, in a way. Again, just as you all have grown and you're expanded and you're more complex and everything, sometimes you need more positions, different levels, different skills. So I know budgets are tight, but I will speak on behalf of the accounting and finance profession to say, if you can keep that in the budget, I will lobby for Karen and her team to have those, just because they are an easy position to cut, especially as a school district. They don't serve children directly, but it is important that you have it, because the funding, at the end of the day, we all know in business, right, that where the money is how everything is directed. So while you do have to serve schools, you want to make sure that the finances are sound and structured. So I know she has some other positions in there that she's lobbying for as well, and we would support that as the auditors. We can't put that in writing, but I will personally stand here and say I would support it.
So it's not an official recommendation.
Thank you, Bill.
Understand.
If I may just wrap up my third and last question. Food service fund. You mentioned kind of where we are status-wise, and I know that over the past several years, especially since coming out of the pandemic, that's been a concern, just given the imbalance in parents paying off their students or their child's kind of meal account before the year wrapped, and the school system having to absorb those costs. Could you explain a bit to me about the food service fund and how it works?
Sure. So the problem with the food service fund is it can't be used to pay off the negative balances.
Okay.
It has to come from the operating fund, our general fund. But we do have plans to spend that money. We've put in a new computer system for the food and nutrition folks, bought tables. There's a whole plan to spend the money down.
Okay, so those are just the static cost that we would have for food service. It doesn't
Yes.
account for
So what
any of the
happens-
overages
Correct.
in other areas.
So what happens with the food service fund is that it has to be used for food service only. So we couldn't use that money in any other way other than, as I mentioned, for either more equipment in the kitchen, computers, people.
Understood.
That's all we can use it for. The
The
food.
majority of that money is coming from the federal government.
Yes.
The food nutrition program. You do get some local pay, but a lot of that has come. And over the years during the pandemic, the federal government was flooding that program. So it built up a
did,
reserve
yeah.
in it essentially.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions, Dr. Small?
No questions, just to say that I hope you get the assistance that you all need, because looking at the team, you just.
Do we look pretty ragged?
Yeah, you just.
We are a little bit.
Yes.
Oh, you look
just
refreshed. Yes.
The monitoring piece is a big thing, so.
Yep.
You need a bigger team, so that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hancock?
Ms. Smith actually asked a
She got
couple
all our
of questions.
questions,
Yeah,
right?
thank you for that. That's right, yeah. And especially the pensions. You
Yeah.
covered that. So just thank you. Thank you for this well-detailed presentation of the audit. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kramer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, Ms. Smith also asked all of my questions, so I will just, thank you, Ms. Smith. So I just want to say thank you because you look wonderful, but I can tell that there has been stress. And I'm just glad that this piece is, behind us. And just do want to reiterate that, I think we've talked about this a few times about different topics, but this is another appropriate time to bring this up, that we cannot continue to operate like a small school system anymore, right? So, again, tight budget times, to your point, but it's very important that we're financially secure, financially responsible, and that we have the appropriate staff that you need, because we certainly don't want to put extra stress on the folks that we do have, because we want to retain you as well. And so just thank you for going through this grueling process, and I'm glad that Dr. Navarro did put those positions in the budget, and I do think that that's going to really help, and hopefully we're able to to fulfill that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Warren, any questions or comments around the audit? Okay. Let me just say thank you all. I know this is grueling work. I've served on some audit committees against my will. I'd almost rather get another root canal because I know down to the penny you have to be accountable for everything and all of these millions and millions of dollars in different accounts. So thank you all very much. I remember when they reached out to me and they wanted to question me. I said, wait a minute. How did I get in this? And basically, as Dr. Navarro jokes, just want to make sure that no one is going to be going out in any orange jumpsuits. That's the first thing, that there is no fraud. I was like, I can assure you, not to my knowledge. So thank you for not making me a liar, first of all. But second of all, exactly what Vice Chair Kramer said. We're a growing system. It's great to know that we're a strong system in a time when many, many school systems have to make difficult decisions. Not to say that we don't, but overall, we're in pretty good shape, knock on wood, as of right this minute. Things can change at any moment. So I appreciate exactly what Mr. Early, I apologize. Mr. Early said that because we have had our staff that have been with us for so long, and you've been able to weather so many of these storms, and be able to, even with new systems, with all these challenges, just still keep guiding us in such a positive and strong light. It means a lot to us because it's just candidly one less thing we have to panic about at this moment. So thank you very much to Ms. Acton, to Ms. Fisher-Davis, to your entire team. And thank you as well to our auditors. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And next up, we have some very special guests this afternoon. For those who do not know, we have students visiting us from Bunkyo. Welcome, all the way from Tokyo, Japan. Hello. Hi. So good to see you all. I'm glad you could join. Now we can truthfully say we have millions of viewers. Yeah. So our Chief of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Kevin Lowndes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
He and I will present as we had the honor of visiting them last month.
Yes. So Chairperson Moore-Lee, Vice Chairperson Kramer, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Navarro. Today I have the opportunity to present with our chairperson, Ms. Moore-Lee, and talk a little bit about our trip that we had the opportunity to go to Bunkyo University and to sign off and talk about our memorandum of understanding. But just to give a little history, so we are currently in our 35th year with a partnership with Bunkyo University.
Fantastic.
Bunkyo has students that are studying to be teachers in Japan, and part of that is they also have the ability to speak dual language. So they speak both Japanese and they speak English. And in doing that, they give them the opportunity to practice a lesson about Japanese culture in Japan, and we got the opportunity to see them go to a Japanese elementary school and practice that lesson, that they then come over here to Charles County Public Schools and they present that lesson in our classrooms. But they're also here to learn a little bit about American education system and to see how we work on working with students with our disabilities and to work in small groups with our reading and our math students. So it's been a great partnership for 35 years with Bunkyo University, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. But one of the things that we went over to visit Bunkyo University for was to also give our students the opportunity to go to Japan. Our students that are in the Teacher Academy will now have the opportunity to actually do kind of a reverse, where our students will have the ability to practice some teaching skills and then have the opportunity to go to an elementary school there and also see how the students learn in Japan, but also give a lesson while they're there. So it's very exciting. And then hopefully those students are so excited about teaching, they come back to Charles County Public School once they graduate college, and they teach for Charles County Public School. So that's the long plan for these students that go over.
Very long-term recruiting, yes.
But once again, I just want to thank Bunkyo University. They paid for Chairperson Morley and myself to go over. And then we also had the opportunity to bring our spouses, which we both paid for our spouses to go over too. So Charles County Public Schools did not have to pay for anything with the trip.
Mr. Lowndes.
And then this is just some of the wording that shows where our students will have the opportunity to go over to Japan to do some teaching and learning. I just want to say that it was a thrill to go over there, but the best part for me was actually working with the students in the Bunkyo University. They took us around and they brought us and they practiced their English. I can honestly say I don't think I've spoken that much since my own children have moved out of my house. But it was fantastic to be able to be around the young students and to be able to have all that energy around us. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chairperson Morley, and she's going to talk a little bit about our visit over there.
Thank you, Mr. Lowndes. And I will repeat again that this was at no cost to CCPS, for those who may be wondering. Mr. Lowndes and I paid for our spouses to attend. Bunkyo was very, very gracious, and I cannot highlight, underscore, emphasize that enough. They were just darling, and they are now part of our family. Very special shout out to all the students that are joining us today, and to Professors Fukada, if I'm saying it correctly, and Sato. You all were wonderful. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to see you all the way over here. For those who have never been, it is, well, we went to Detroit first, and then from Detroit, it's still about 13 hours. So, yeah, you all have endured a lot to be with us. I've seen some of the pictures of some of the things that you got to do over the weekend as you're staying with your host families. Sad to say, already on Friday you're leaving. I'm going to be so sad. But let me just share a little bit about our itinerary. I will say that it was packed. It was packed, it was fun, it was eventful. You can see on slide number 5 that we arrived with the time difference. It's 14 hours. So when we arrived, and of course it was a delay, it was late night on Saturday. Then Sunday we had a free day, which of course went very quickly. So we can move to slide number 6. This is why it starts on day 3, because the first day was travel, the second day was rest, and then as you can see, the third day, we were out and about. We got to visit all kinds of incredible things. So these pictures were taken in Tokyo. Oh, the slide. Oh, sure. Thank you. Which one do I press? Just to the right? Okay, let's see. Oh, we're back. All right. And then correct me if I'm mispronouncing it, Professor Hikata, Asakusa? Is that correct? Asakusa. Okay, all right. So these are just some pictures. The first picture is of a police station. The next one was when we were visiting a temple and there were some children gathered. They took us all the way to the top of the Tokyo Sky Center, which, yes, sorry? Sky Tree, thank you. Oh, that's my husband. Thank you, Mr. John Vallee Sr. The Sky Tree, which is the equivalent for those who've ever been like to the Empire State Building or the CN Tower, where you can see the entire city. It's absolutely remarkable. All right, then moving on. Did it change for you all? No. Uh-oh. I may not be able to reach it. Okay. That's not that. Okay. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Lowndes. So these are just more pictures as we move to the next slide, just out and about. And if any of our board members have particular questions about what we saw, what we did, happy to answer in more detail. Just in the interest of time, again, more pictures, the next slide, number 9 of Tokyo. I will draw your attention to the picture with the robots, with the lunch menus. That was the coolest experience. Those robots are actually controlled by people who are differently abled, and they control them with their eyes. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I had some video, but unfortunately, my video was low quality. But you actually interact with the robot. So you'll ask questions, and it'll respond, and it will not let you off the hook. It'll go back and forth as long as you want it to go back and forth. The robot dances. I mean, it was remarkable. And you can see at the top right, there's some traditional kimonos. The bottom picture all the way to the right, that is Shingawa Station, which is where we were. Yeah, we stayed at the Prince Hotel Shingawa, and that was the station right across the street from us. And it was fantastic. Their train system, on the next slide, you'll see, is nothing like I've ever seen. That's their map. And their children as young as 6 that navigate this by themselves. It's quite remarkable. I'm very pleased to say they did not let us wander alone because they knew that they would probably get a call somewhere in the middle of the night that we were lost. But it was fantastic. And as you know, Tokyo is very well known for their tech. They did not disappoint. They have some things, I'm like, why are we not doing this? Everything is tech, and everything is so intuitive. Like, you go to the bathroom, and the seat is warmed for you, and you have just the right purse hook, and you know what I mean? Everything is exactly where it should be. There's even running water playing when you're going to the bathroom. I was like, this is remarkable. I cannot stress to you enough how generally gracious these people are. They are very, very hospitable. As you can tell, I loved my trip. All the way to the right is one of the metro trips that we took. And I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit. At the top, they even have ads in the metro. So while you're there, you can be reading about anything you may like to purchase. So next up is Bunkyo University, where our guests are visiting us from. It's actually in what we would consider more of an urban area. So I will say I had a very hard time because you know I love to take pictures and videos. I had over 500. Like, I just took everything. So this is kind of like the path leading up to it. And I can't stress enough again that they went so out of their way. For many of our students, our professors, they would ride the train an hour to an hour and a half one way to meet us, to take us around, take the train back to our hotel to see us off, and then take it another hour to hour and a half back to their home. I mean, it was just truly next level with how gracious they were. Yes, and then slide number 12. Dowdy's like, I wouldn't do all that. The first picture is actually the university itself. And then you'll see us on en route walking to the university. And then over to the right, the last picture again is the university in the distance. Can you tell us, Professor Foucault, I forgot, about how many students are there?
In our Koshigai campus, we have about 4,000.
4,000, okay. Thank you very much. All right, and then the final picture of Bunkyo is us with many of the students. And you cannot go anywhere in Tokyo without receiving a gift. We were so spoiled, so spoiled. All right, so, and as Mr. Lowndes mentioned while we were there, we got to preview some of the presentations that they will be giving to our students this week. And one of them I remember was on bento boxes and the love and care and thought that goes into it. And it's almost like a love gift that's given to a parent, from a parent to a child or vice versa, and they will put your favorite foods and your favorite fruit. And it's just really that hour or whatever they spend preparing it, they're thinking of you and they're sending like a message that you will have a great day. It's so sweet, it really is. So the next picture, slide number 4, day number 4, slide number 14, day number 4, is us at Bunkyo Elementary. And the lady that is standing all the way to, let me see, to the left with the glasses with her hands like this, that is the principal. And so she showed us all around. Next slide, please. And you can see some of our students in the picture all the way to the right. That black bag they're looking at is a book bag. And so even something you would think as simple as a book bag, there's a lot of thought and care. So all the students at that university carry that book bag. So if you see them, it's easy to identify them because they all have the same bag. And inside the bag, there's a space for the laptop, there's a space for water, there's a space for everything. Like everything is so meticulously designed. It's remarkable. If you see the picture with the fish, that's one of our gifts. Everywhere you go, you take your shoes off. So you have these huge cubbies. Every student comes in, and they have their cubby where they take their shoes off. Guests do the same thing. And behind the fish are stickers. Those are actually stickers of all of the teachers. So I thought that was so sweet. Yeah, they do very, very great gifts. You see in the center one of the professors. He's not here today. Professor, we call him Professor Teshi, Professor Teshima, if I'm saying it correctly. He's there with the principal as they were presenting gifts to us, and we presented gifts to them. And then all the way in the bottom are some students outside in PE. It was one of the videos that I got that unfortunately the quality wasn't the best, so I apologize. All right. Next, more pictures of Bunkyo University. The picture all the way to the far right at the top is them during PE. And they're just so innovative because you know how when we have PE and you want to clearly identify the two teams, and for us, you might wear different color shirts or different uniforms. They have a reversible hat. So if you're on the orange team, you wear the orange side. If you're on the white team, you flip the hat. That's a genius. It was so simple. And then they have hats when they walk home so that people can identify them on the street. So they have these bright color hats, and again, looking at them by the book bags, by the hats, you know they go to this school. And so it's easy if a student is not where they're supposed to be, and you can identify, hey, why does that student with that book bag, why are they in this area? Because it's very likely they don't belong in that area. So, I mean, I'd say they've thought of everything. The bottom picture below the PE is the entrance to Bunkyo Elementary. In the center are some students in their classroom. The top left, there's a robot that rotates between the classrooms. It's very, very cool. And they learn so much just interacting with this robot. And I was like, man, I would love to see something like that here. And then at the bottom is the principal, and the students were taking turns greeting us. And they start learning English at 6. So all of their students are fully bilingual by the time they graduate. It's fantastic. All right, next slide. So this is Ripple Lifelong Learning Center. And this is a very small center. There were about 5 students there. So when students want to get additional support, typically they have to pay for it. So the after-school activities that we may offer, these students, their parents pay for this, and they spend an additional at least hour after school learning English. So the ages varied from about, I think, 8 to about 12 approximately. And they have a lot of different learning styles. So some of it is interactive on the computer. Some of it is just, you can tell it's just memory work. Some of it is because the students may not necessarily be at the same levels. So the professor has to then be able to identify, okay, this person may need a little more support. Some things they answer all together. So it was a wide variety to keep them engaged. And the most amazing thing is even the 8-year-old at the end of this, when they go home, they're not necessarily being picked up. Many of them are going home by themselves. So they're biking, they're walking. It's just such a natural thing in the culture that we as Americans may have some anxiety about. There's 6-year-olds when they start school that will get on the metro by themselves and be gone. We saw one little guy, he stood on his tippy toes. It's the cutest thing ever. He called his parents, he said what he had to say, he hung up, whipped out his wallet, scanned his metro card, and was gone. And I was terrified, and he was so completely comfortable. And I was like, man, this is remarkable. So let me just 1 second refer to my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, so far so good. And transportation generally is not provided unless you're in rural areas, if I didn't say that as well. So yeah, you are, on your own. All right, next, slide number 18, day number 5 at, I'm gonna struggle, Kawayanagi Elementary. Oh, I did it! Oh, I'm back! For the pleasure of Ms. Butler Washington, I included a picture of the school uniforms. Do not read anything into that. I just thought you would appreciate that. I didn't get her started. I know. As soon as I said, oh, I know exactly who would appreciate that picture. Okay. All right, so slide number 19, the Civic Hall. This was one of the highlights for me. Professor Fukada's wife, Naomi, is one of the experts in special education, and so we had an inclusive discussion on education. And what really struck me is how many things, candidly, we take for granted here. In Japan, special education is not as widely, candidly accepted, and definitely not as widely administered as it is here. And so what's normal for us, for a student to have an IEP, to have a 504, to have anything that, to the best of our ability, can meet their needs, it doesn't happen over there. Students, generally speaking, are all in the general population classroom, and they do their best to keep up. And so I asked about, well, what happens if a student needs to maybe repeat a grade or needs additional support? They manage the best they can, but they don't have the specific, like what we would call pull out or push in or any of those services. That's definitely not the norm there. They are, and actually, one of the things we learned to appreciate is, and Mr. Lowndes is the special ed expert, feel free to jump in. The U.S. does special education better than most countries in the world. We have a long way to go. It's not to say we're perfect, but we spent about, an hour and a half? About an hour and a half, just having the conversation on all of the things that we do that we take for granted. We're like, oh, well, we just do blah, blah, and they're like, wow. And so, feel free, yes.
What was interesting was the federal guidelines, right? The
Yes.
protections that we have in
Yes,
place in the
great
United
point.
States. And they just don't have the protections in place for all students. And so as a result of that, all students don't get the services that our students get.
Yeah.
I think, they were trying to learn because, the parent advocates here are trying to do more in their community and try to get more for students that have special needs. And I thought, it was great to see that, it's really a groundswell of advocacy from the locals trying to get more for their students and making sure that they have what they need in order to be successful.
Yeah.
But ours, they're guaranteed by law.
Right.
And that all school systems across the United States have to provide special education services.
Yeah, and that's definitely not something that you would see in Japan. All right, next slide, please. So, Kawayanagi Elementary School. I'm back. That's about the extent of the Japanese that I learned. If you look at the bottom left, that's actually a letter from CCPS to the students over there. I believe it's either the 4th or 5th grade students. Now, what made this visit so unique, if you see the picture of the school lunch, we actually had a school lunch while we were there. They told us we were very lucky that was Noodles Day. I was thrilled. So this is a typical lunch, and you can see the portion sizes. I can tell you, not to throw someone under the bus, but both of my sons are here. This would never fly with my boys. They'd be talking double lunch all day. So one of the things that was very unique is that they have, generally speaking, 3 different options for lunch. Students don't typically bring their lunch. Students help to serve the lunch. They eat lunch in the classroom with their teachers. So the teachers don't have like a break, just candidly. Once they're in that school, they're on all day. Students either make lunch at school or help make lunch. There's a private company that provides lunch, or there's a public company that provides lunch. And all of that they pay for. And of course, there's a difference in the price. As best we can understand, there isn't necessarily a difference in the meals, but it's definitely a difference in the price. So maybe there's a difference in the quality. Like, for example, with us, just to put it in perspective, maybe there's a difference in the brands, perhaps, that they use. But they're about the same. And usually the bento boxes, we learned, are provided for the higher grades. So usually at this level, and these are, again, elementary school students, they eat their lunch there in the class, and they eat on, I was too tickled, on real dishes, like breakable, nice dishes. So they have companies bring the dishes in every day, they eat their lunch, and then they take them away every day. I was like, wow. But it just really creates a nice ambiance because you're enjoying your lunch, you're taking your time, you're interacting with your classmates, you're thinking about, you know what I mean? They don't necessarily have more time to eat, but they take turns serving each other. So it's very much a we culture, and they learn very early to be self-sufficient, to be independent, to be helpful. So I really enjoyed that. Lunch was great. I loved it. Now, you'll get a kick out of this. That picture all the way at the bottom right, it's like it's a long pole. Can anyone guess what that's for? You'll never guess. That's in case of intruders. They will take it and kind of like, you know what I mean? I know, I didn't believe it, but it's true. I know, Mr. Profound is cracking up. So if anyone breaks in, that's like their defense mechanism. But they don't have the kind of, I hate to say it, the kind of gun culture that we have here. So it's very rare that you're gonna have to have those real concerns. So I was too tickled. I was like, that's your defense. I know, right? No. In the event someone breaks in, because it's not, something they typically worry about. And then the picture on the other side of the school lunch, what I love is that they learn calligraphy from a very early age. And so their work is displayed, and it's really, really masterful. Very, very well done. And right above the calligraphy are the cubbies where they place their shoes. All right, next slide, please. So this is Oshawa Elementary? Osawa, okay. All right. And what was very unique about this, and you can see some of the pictures where I absolutely loved everything about this, but in particular, the gentleman all the way at the top right, where he's holding the frame and you see the doll in the picture, there's a story of the blue-eyed doll. And I'm going to mess this up, but I'm going to do my best to summarize. Feel free to jump in. But the story behind it is after Pearl Harbor, when they were trying to repair Japanese and American relations, it was sent as a gift. And so the dolls that he's holding, and the reason why he's holding his gloves is those are, 100 years old? They're very, very old. Very rare. At one point, I believe there were 12,000, and now there are just a few remaining. And so they treat them with care. And so he gave us like the whole story behind the doll. Alas, that is the best of my recollection. Would anyone like to, do you remember any more, Mr. Lyons, please?
I just remember that's the principal who's the one who's actually sharing the
Okay.
story. If you have any more.
You're welcome to join us, Professor Fakati.
About 13,000 dolls that got sent.
Yeah.
And they all got lost, and there was only about 300 of them all throughout Japan that were found.
Mm.
After that, and that's one of them.
Ah.
Osawa Elementary School. Oh, yeah, right outside.
These people walk by right before you get to the superintendent's.
Oh, that's a good know. Okay, I didn't realize that. And so they're handled with extreme care. Yeah, they're letters. I believe the doll had birth certificate. Like they really, really, it's almost like to us like an American Girl doll, but if it were at least 100 years old. Just very, very valuable. Still in traditional clothes. It was fantastic, and it just really symbolizes the repairing of the relationship. So these are some pictures. Just yes.
No, I just wanted to add in
Sure.
2027. That would, so 2 years later,
Yeah.
it's going to be the 100th anniversary for this.
Oh, very nice. In 2 more years. Yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. All right, next slide is Koyo Junior High School, and you see the steps leading up to the junior high. The next picture at the top is a schedule, again with the calligraphy. That's a picture of their gym, some of their trophies, and just various pictures in the hallway. All the way at the bottom to the right is sinks where they wash their hands. And it took me a while to be like, what is that? But when I went close, I was like, those are sinks. But again, everything is just the right height, is just where you'd expect it to be. Everything is just so, I can't explain it any more than that, just intuitive. But just when you think, oh, I'd like to wash my hands, and there's the sink, there's the soap. I want to go to the bathroom, there's the running water, the toilet is already warm. I mean, it's just the little things. I was so spoiled in the short time I was there. One of the things I thought was very, very remarkable, and I would love to see if we can't do it on this level, but if we could consider it for the future, at the university level, all students graduate with a teacher's certificate. I was like, that's so genius. So you can always teach. Yes, we're teaching. So even if you don't teach right when you graduate, you can always come back. And they say many people do. Sometimes you go into another career and then you come back later and teach. So you already have a built-in, candidly certified, cadre of people to select from. I was like, yeah, that was just brilliant. All right, next slide, please. This is us on the right with some of the students and Professor Sato. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. and Mrs. Lowndes walked something like 14 miles that day. They went everywhere. That's in front of the Emperor's Palace. That's as close as we could get, unfortunately, but it is beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And then I just really like this picture. It's just ladies in traditional kimonos. You didn't see it a lot, but it was very eye-catching when you did see it. And the flat Stanleys. So, you know, for those that don't know the story, I know, most of you know, I know. So, yeah, yes, exactly. They've made their way all the way around the world, and we saw many of them that the students there had created. So it was just so sweet.
We have a little partnership with T.C. Martin and J.C. Parks.
Yes.
And I believe these are the ones that we sent over from our schools and they had
Very
outside.
nice.
So.
And Mr. Lowndes, the next slide, it doesn't look like it has music. Oh, can you, oh, there we go. These are some of the students.
You can hear it.
Can we hear it? This is in the music class. Oh.
That's their school song.
Yeah. Do you remember what grade that was? I don't remember. It was elementary school, though. Yeah. I want to say it was like third or fourth. Yeah. So as I wrap up, it's definitely very much a weed culture based on shared responsibility, early independence, which I absolutely loved, and also a little bit about their Board of Education. We did get to meet one of their board members. Their board is very different than ours. They were shocked when they found out our board is elected. Their board is appointed. They typically serve 6 years, and their board members are teachers. So all of their Board of Education, they're teachers first, and then they help teach teachers, which I thought was pretty cool. And another thing, when I asked the question about the substitute teachers, that's not really something that they typically do. And so when the principal explained, I want to say it was at Kawayanagi Elementary.
It was.
That I said, well, what do you do if a teacher is sick? And he's like, well, any given day, we have about 45 teachers and we need 38. I said, well, how do you get that extra 7? He includes himself, he includes the assistant principal, he includes basically any staff. So anybody at that school is considered also a substitute teacher. There's not really a separate substitute teacher, you know, pool, so to speak. I was like, man, it's remarkably efficient. So he's like, I'm 39. The assistant principal is 40. We're like, oh, got it. Very efficient. That very big on efficiency, technology, and just hospitality. If I had to sum up our trip in 3 words, it was remarkable. Anything else I forgot, Mr. Lowndes?
No, I just think, you know, once again, I can't state it enough. Everyone is graduates the university with a teaching degree, which I think is brilliant, yes. Which I would love to see us do here in the United States. So, and it's very important. I think, what we learned from Professor Sato is that the parents actually encourage their kids to get the degree, whether they plan on using it now or not.
Yes.
Because what ends up happening is their second career folks actually have a degree to teach. Mm-hmm. And so people that do come back as their second career are all set to go and have already done what's needed to be a certified teacher.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they they don't typically have a lot of vacancies. Like at that one school, they estimated they may need 3 to 4 teachers for the upcoming year. I was like, I wish. That's remarkable.
But the one thing I forgot to mention at the
Sure.
beginning, so the second week that the students are here from the university, Bunkyo University, they're actually staying with families within Charles County Public Schools. And I just
Including
really
our
want to
vice
thank
chair
the
is one of the host families.
Yes, I want to thank all the families
Yes.
for taking the students in and working with them. It's been
Yes,
a really...
thank you.
Are you going to bring them up, or?
Sure, they're welcome to. Well, first, before you come up, do you have any questions or comments from the board members? Yes.
Well, one, I definitely want to thank you and Mr. Lowndes for taking on this very arduous task.
Oh, it was a struggle. It really was.
Traveling in the cultural exchange and representing Charles County so well. Thank you both. I know that travel is not for the weak. It is a very far place to go, and it's very hard to get there. So thank you both. And thank you for the students who agreed to come over. Thank you so very
Yes,
much.
Thank you.
Wow. That was a lot to cover in just the few days you were
I
there.
was rolling.
And we appreciate you all. We know that the schedule was jam-packed. And let me know if some of this you want to take offline, but I am so very interested in, completely out of order, but like the robot that was kind of going between classrooms. I know that, well, several years ago, I did see for some of our medically fragile students, we did have kind of like a tablet that would go between classes so that they were able to still be a part of the learning experience and the learning environment, but of course, remote and virtual.
Right.
This is way before the pandemic, so I'm just curious if we can learn something from that and thinking about some of our students who can't physically be in person. I know we have virtual
We
school.
saw at the elementary school was used for coding.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it helps teach the kids how to code.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
for the students in
they
the
would
building.
code the robot.
Love that, love that.
Yeah.
Very interesting that transportation is not provided and is only for those students who are sort of most remote.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that that is not our stance here, in our country, but very interesting to see how other countries are sort of grappling with transportation and what that looks like in terms of services they provide for students and families. Special education, I was hoping you would touch upon that. IDEA is a very wonderful law that ensures that, students with disabilities are able to get a free and appropriate public education to meet their specific needs. And I know that many countries do travel here to get a sense of how do we educate, our students who are just differently abled. So very excited to hear you share kind of how, they're also kind of thinking about it, but that, we kind of stand head and shoulders above many other places, although we still have a far way to go and we shouldn't rest on our laurels. There's much more that we can do. But interesting to hear how other countries are dealing with that. Noodles Day at school.
Woo!
Yes,
I
please.
hit the lottery.
I have 3 customers in our school system who would love Noodles Day. So, Dr. Navarro, I'm kind of making eyes at you. I don't know how we make that happen, but definitely want Noodles Day, and I want to be able to visit all the schools on their Noodles Day. I'm curious, Mr. Lowndes and Ms. Morley, Chair Morley, what are the hours of school? Because it seems like they were able to pack, a lot into their day from being able to have that, very kind of together and collegial kind of eating space, but also being exposed to music and a variety of other classes. What is their typical day?
That's a great question. I believe it's comparable to ours.
It is the same amount of time we're in school as well.
What, 7, 8 hours?
Yeah, but one of the things they do
Yeah.
do is that their teachers are expected to do the after-school programs and the after-school events that take place. And so they
Yeah.
don't get paid extra.
No,
No,
it's just
and they
part of
don't
their
have
day.
planning periods to speak of.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
hear you say that.
Yeah.
My last question is, I would be very interested in just the training of educators in terms of if you were studying to be a chemist, how do you then couple that with being an educator? Like, what are those add-on courses that ensures that you're able to be a chemist, but then you can also come back as potentially a science teacher? I think there's a lot that we can learn there in terms of our training of different professionals and how we add that component on to eventually ensure that we're able to graduate folks who have degrees and credentials in one field, but able to make the jump to having a degree and credentials in the education field as well. So I think right now we look at it as like almost 2 separate tracks, and maybe people who come back for a second career after they're done in their initial field of choice. So
So my understanding, and Steve, maybe you can help me out,
I
is that
said,
they go.
please
and
join
they
us,
get
Professor
They
Furcado.
get their degree first, and then they stay and they get an additional teaching
Certificate.
after.
okay, so they have their
They have their
chemist
content
degree.
knowledge, and then they
Yeah.
get the pedagogy to teach.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Ms. Thomas and then Ms. Warren.
Thank you. I won't ask too many questions, but the one question I did have, Ms. Smith kind of touched upon, is the university a teaching university, that it's just strictly teaching, or is it other things? And then, because that was my question about, like, how do we, because we've talked about this often, about how we translate our professionals who have to have teacher certifications, as the superintendent of Maryland has talked about. I just saw yesterday or the day before yesterday on the news, Fairfax County was like, oh, federal employees are being laid off, come be a teacher. And I was like, well, these people don't necessarily have qualifications to be a teacher. How are they going to work that out? So I just thought, that would be very interesting for us to examine how we can help people transition into a career with their subject matter expertise coupled with the teacher training. That would be very interesting for us to use that as another, opportunity to augment the workforce of teachers.
Right.
And even if it was substitute teachers, because candidly, full disclosure, Charles County has started talking about, for those federal employees that, may need a home, hey, if to the extent that we can help, absolutely. So, yeah, and actually the state superintendent shared that as well, Dr. Wright, at the most recent, what was it, was it Ways and Means? I know it was on the Education Excellence Bill that Dr. Navarro did an excellent job presenting on our behalf. And so, yeah, they're not alone in that. Everyone at this moment is trying to poach where they can. Yes, 1 second. Will you finish, Ms. Thomas?
I am, thank
Okay,
you.
Ms. Warren and then Ms. Brenda Thomas.
You mentioned that the students will be teaching here. What schools will they be at? Do we know the schedule? Because I like to
yeah,
go and
that-
stop
do
in.
you
I
know-
don't have it on me. I can send it to you.
Okay,
I know
yeah,
they
because
were
I
at
like
the
to go
old-
and observe and see
I
them.
know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all this week, so I'll make sure you get it.
Okay. And also, I guess they don't have, how we have conditional certified teachers and all that. They don't go through that process there.
But Steve, he does the teacher training. You want to come up, Steve?
I do not know the system. That's the first time I heard that.
Okay, conditional.
Yeah, for somebody coming in from
Yeah,
a
they
different
probably
field,
don't.
has a different degree, and they
Yeah,
want to
would have
teach, yeah, kind of thing.
take all courses online to get their certificate before they could step foot in the classroom.
Okay,
Or
all right.
enter university begin from,
All right.
from the freshman year.
Yeah, so all teachers essentially start at the same level. Okay. That's it. All right. Anything else, Ms. Moore? Okay, thank you. Ms. Thomas?
Can you explain the food program again, like the lunch program?
Oh.
Because like with Al, we having problems collecting for the program, so could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure, and feel free to jump in, gentlemen. The principal explained that they have 3 different tracks, if you will. And we asked a lot of questions, and a lot of it sounded candidly like mostly maybe tradition. Because we're like, well, why do you do that? And he's just like, it's just what we do. So the first one is lunch that is prepared at the university. Then there's lunch that's brought in by an outside private company, and lunch that's brought in by an outside public company. So all 3 of those have to be paid for by the parents. And he explained the difference in the pricing. Do you recall, Mr. Lyons? I believe the least expensive option was what was prepared at the school,
Correct.
then the lunch that was brought in by the outside public company, and then finally the private company. And honestly, that's as much as I retain. Do you remember any? Or
really,
I know,
depending-
same. Okay, your 3
Depending
tiers,
where
yeah.
the school was, depending on what their options were and whether they had the facilities to actually make the lunch, is my understanding.
Right.
And so one of the elementary schools did not have the facilities to make the lunch, and so they ended up hiring an outside company. They'd bring it in by a truck, and then you got all these little kids marching down. And 2 of them on each side of the kettle, carrying these heavy kettles to the classrooms.
Right.
And then some bringing
It is.
dishes, and
And
then they're
setting up.
serving one another, and then at the end, they were all cleaning up and,
Yep.
and bringing it back. But there was
Without complaint.
without-
Let me add that part. And
but the way
also-
they talked about how they teach responsibility,
Yeah.
and they use it as a teachable moment.
Okay. And also, my husband sent a message. He said that the parents don't pay to the school directly. They pay taxes to the local government building. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Anything else you'd like to add, sir? Since you did the, yes. Yeah, because he has a very good memory when it comes to this. I've forgotten about that part. They don't pay to the school. Yes.
So the parents pay their local government, so let's say like the Charles County tax building, they would pay directly to them.
John, you want to come to the mic? Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry. I know, right? You didn't know you're going to be on camera. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing? Jonathan Lee. So the long and short is that they don't pay the school directly. There's 3 different ways that the food can come in. They can either cook it in the schools, they could either have an outside contractor bring in the food, or another party bring in the food. And that's the food, the dishes, everything.
Yeah.
Once the food and the dishes come, the kids bring it to the classroom every day. Nobody brings their own lunch until you get higher levels in high school where you start to get bento boxes and all that. However, the parents pay directly to the government. And then the government kicks the money to the schools, which then pays the food. So when you start talking about issues with people not paying, that wouldn't be an issue where the school is chasing a parent. If you don't pay the government your X amount of dollars in taxes, your kid will still eat, but the government is coming after you directly. So that's how that works.
Yeah.
A couple of other quick observations. When you talk about the dolls,
Yeah.
those dolls, I think there are only 12 in Japan, and that happened before World War II. Once World War II happens, they got rid of all the dolls because the U.S. was in competition with Japan. So that one doll is close to almost, like you said, 100 years old. They made anime cartoons about it. They made books. There's a whole song and dance with the dolls. The man hands the doll with gloves that he pulls out. Like it's a cherished heirloom of that school that they found in the school just on happenstance. Like somebody was cleaning out the bottom of the school and found the doll, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is one of these valuable dolls."
Yeah.
So, anything else? Any other questions? I have answers.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, sir. Don't take over our
Thank you
presentation.
so much.
Appreciate you. So if we could please have you all just stand up so we can formally, and I mean, obviously we could tell from the sweatshirts who's visiting, but welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, you all are being recorded, so welcome. You're part of our millions. I know some of the schools are like Neal and Mudd, and most of our, most of our elementary schools. Yeah. Professor Fukada, if you could please give us a wave. He's one of our lead professors. Professor Sato. And ma'am, if you, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to meet you there. What is your name, ma'am? Eriko. Oh, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was fantastic. So as Mr. Lowndes shared, thank you, have a seat. We will have some of our TAM students going over next year. So that's going to be incredible for them. Yes. If there are no further questions or comments, we are supposed to go into public forum. Do we have anyone signed up, Mr. Schwartz?
That clock is 3 minutes past. So
Okay.
but nobody signed up yet.
Okay, all right. And do we have anyone online? No. No, okay. All right, if we could, because I know we're going to need a bio break, if we could take a 10-minute break, and if we have anyone sign up, we'll still be able to get them in. All right, thank you all so much for joining. Please take us off the air, Kyle. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Per our staff attorney, Mr. Eric Schwartz, we do not have anyone signed up to speak at public forum, either in person or virtually. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the renaming of Smallwood. Will this be you, Ms. Mackey? Okay, if you could please, if you all could join us, and please introduce yourselves. I apologize, I don't have your names.
Board members, Dr. Navarro, staff, all of our viewers watching, and those who are here with us in person. My name is Shelley Mackey. I'm the Director of Communications for Charles County Public Schools, and I am also the staff liaison to our school renaming committee. Joining me to help present this evening is Jenica Irvin. She's the chairperson of our renaming committee. She is also one of our middle school parents. I have Brian Sandifer, who is our vice chairperson of the renaming committee, and he is a community member that lives in the Indian Head area. Lastly, at the table with us is Ms. Christina Miller. She is a parent of students at one of our feeder schools for Smallwood, Mount Hope Nanjemoy Elementary School.
And Ms., if I could point out, Ms. Mackey, also Principal Orlena Watley is present from Smallwood, and Ms. Diotha Swat, who I believe also served on the committee.
Yes.
Any
So
other committee members, if you could just, thank you. Thank you for joining. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, right?
So I was going to run through.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
No worries.
I'm going to
wanna
run
make sure.
through all of our committee members and recognize those that were able to join us this evening. So to provide the board and the public with an overview of this process, I came before the board in November and gave an update to the board about the renaming process and how we were going to solicit name submissions as well as individuals to serve on our committee. So guidelines for the renaming of a school or facility are outlined under Board Policy 7230. So this particular committee reviewed and considered name submissions to present here to you all, the Board of Education. I do want to reiterate that the Board of Education makes the final school name selection. So that criteria that we talk about, Board Policy 7230, the committee familiarized themselves with this policy and the criteria and looked at the name submissions based on what's outlined in policy for school name recommendations, one of which is name of a geographic feature of or location in Charles County. As long as the name is recognized, it relates to the area. If the geographic name contains the name of an identified person, or the name meets the provisions of the policy concerning a person's name. Item number 2, name other than a person or geographic feature or location that the board deems appropriate, as long as it doesn't conflict with current board policies, values, or curricular objectives. And I do want to share that this committee also reviewed those core values. Name of a person, as long as the person has been deceased for at least 10 years and has made a demonstrated contribution to the community, county, state, nation that exemplifies the board's current core values. So that's the main criteria that this committee reviewed. So to jump forward, we have 16 individuals who are on the school naming committee. Sarah Berry, who's a 7th grader at Smallwood, is here with us tonight. Sarah, if you want to wave. Rosemary Bronner, I'm not sure if Miss Bronner was able to come in. Latrice Chase, she's an alumni. Jacqueline Gray, Smallwood alumni. Miss Brandy Hudson, who's a Smallwood parent, she's here with us this evening. Miss Irvin to my left. Calder Funkhauser May, who's also a 7th grader at Smallwood. Christina Miller, who's with me here this evening. Mariam Mohammed, a Smallwood Middle School parent. I have our community school coordinator, staff member Robin Mudd, who's here this evening. Miss Eileen Parks, who's a member of our Charles County community. She is here as well. Mr. Sandifer, who's seated with me up forward. Mary Sandifer, a Smallwood staff member. Miss Karan Shelton, who's a 6th grader at General Smallwood. Miss Diotha Sweat, a Charles County community member. And then Miss Orlena Watley, General Smallwood Middle School principal. I do want to share a little bit about the committee member selection process. If you recall, the school system advertised an interest form in December, and what we did with those data results is I worked with the Office of Accountability, Mr. Steve Roberts and Steve Parakis, to do a lottery selection process, so that I was providing them with that data and asking them to use a random, the tool that we utilize is a random number is assigned, and then the system generates your top 3. I think for our community members, we had over 20 individuals express interest to apply. So the top 3 individuals chosen randomly through that Excel randomization process were offered a seat to participate on the committee. We initially started out with 19 members. We did have a staff member who had some transportation needs and was not able to continue to participate. And I had 2 other feeder school community parents who had RSVP'd for the first initial meeting that we had and then were not able to come. And following up with them, the commitment time just wasn't there. Additionally, the board policy and the accompanying superintendent rule for the renaming of a school that is within an incorporated town, such as Smallwood, the town of Indian Head, right? Asks that an attempt be made to try to pull someone in from the town of Indian Head or that governing town to come in and participate and provide feedback as a part of the committee. So I do want to share that I did reach out. I made a few attempts to connect with someone at the town of Indian Head, and those attempts were not successful. So I just wanted to share that update with you this evening. So I'm going to pass on the presentation to Ms. Irvin.
Hi, thank you all so much for having me. Thank you, Ms. Mackey and Ms. Watley, for making this as seamless as possible, and Ms. Watley for the effort that you're making at General Smallwood to make it a safe space for your students. We really appreciate that. When we started meeting, we had a list. We went through every single submission. I'll start at the bottom where it says name other than a person or a geographical feature on the submission. We had some things that were just automatically taken off. Adolf Hitler, I believe Woke Elementary were some that we just couldn't consider, so we automatically removed those from the submission. That left us with 27 people and 11 geographical locations. We went through every single person's name. Some people were students who had passed away in Charles County. There were war heroes. We went through every single name, presidents, and we decided anyone that didn't have a direct connection to Charles County, Maryland, we were going to eliminate their names. This included names like Bruce Lee, Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama. We took those off. Then we went and decided that anyone that already was recognized in Charles County, I believe there's a stadium named in honor of someone that was here previously. There is a memorial for one of the students that passed away. We removed those names if they already had recognition in Charles County. We were really trying to hone in on people who were in this area, lived in this area, did something great in this area. With the geographical features, we also looked at other areas in southern Maryland or Maryland as a whole that already had the names that were submitted to us. So I believe there was a school in PG County, Montgomery County, and Calvert County were some of the names that were submitted to us, so we eliminated those. After we did that, we went back and decided that we weren't going to have any names of people. I think it was important for the committee that we recognize the reason that we were here was because we had a name of a school that was named after someone who many years later we found was inappropriate, right? So that could be the case again if we presented a name of a person. Someone could find something in their past that we don't agree with this year, next year, or 20 years from now. So we went back to geographical features for trying to consider the names of the schools with that. We took into consideration the board policy 7230 for the names that we came up with once we eliminated actually all the names that we had on the list. The three names that we did come up with that we're presenting to you all this evening is Potomac Ridge Middle School, West Charles Middle School, and West Side Middle School. The two other committee members here are going to speak about two of the names. I'm going to speak about West Charles Middle School. I am a transplant. I am not from Charles County, but I've lived here for about 9 years. I think it's important to the people who live in West Charles County, to the people of Indian Head, to the alumni of General Smallwood Elementary, that that area gets recognized. The overall consensus was that they feel a little forgotten. And so a geographical location for the school name seems to be not only what those committee and community members want, it's what the three students that we had on the committee also requested. There is a 6th grader and 2 7th graders, so they've got a couple more years to be at that school, and that was voiced repeatedly by several people that it is important that that part of Charles County be recognized in the school name. I'm going to let Mr. Standiford pick up from here.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. I do want to reiterate what you said about how we went about eliminating those names, is that there were votes taken at every step of the way. It wasn't one person saying, we're not going to have this, but everybody was involved. Everybody was voting at each stage of the process. I want to speak to you about Potomac Ridge Middle School. As board members, I'm sure you're familiar with where General Smallwood Middle School is located. It's 400 meters perhaps from the Potomac River. And so one of the names that came up, there is a middle school, I believe, either in, I don't recall whether it's in King George or whether it's in Prince George, but another Potomac Middle School. And so we wanted to avoid a Potomac Middle School, but we thought adding the word ridge to it would give a geographical marker for the school that we are right on the ridge, if you will, of the Potomac River. And so that's why we chose that name. Yeah, she's going to do West Charles last, so you get to do West Side now.
I am presenting West Side Middle School as a name choice. It's just located on the west side of Charles County. The children really kind of like the sound of it. And it's just the location of it. I'll pass it back to you.
Ms. Ruby?
So those are our name submissions that we've got so far. I also wanted to mention that this Thursday we are having a Zoom meeting with the community to get the community input on the three names that we have to see how the community feels about these submissions as well. And we will bring that information back to you all.
I do want to jump in and just share in my role as the liaison. So this name submission data slide that we talked about very quickly here. So the full list in its entirety, transparency, every name submission that we received is posted on our website. If you go under our homepage and go to that quick links menu where we like to tuck all of our important pages there, that information has been posted on our site. I believe, if I recall, we received 39 submissions via the electronic interest form that the school system pushed out for the last couple of weeks of 2024. And then I received 2 name recommendations via email. The directive to the community was to submit it via the interest form or send them to me via US mail or electronically through email. So I do want to share names of a person. There were several individuals that were submitted who did not meet the one component of being deceased for 10 years. One of them was an employee who worked for Charles County Public Schools for a very long time as a pupil personnel worker. A lot of support there, but didn't meet that criteria. Ms. Irvin talked about the name of a person who a stadium is named after. That was John H. Cox. I believe the Westlake High School football stadium was named in his honor. He's a former Charles County Public Schools principal administrator here. The names of 2 individuals who graduated from Charles County Public Schools who passed in the 9/11 terrorist attacks, names were also recommended as well. I believe one is Angela Houts. There's some kind of a memorial in place, I think, at McDonough High School where she graduated from, as well as Chris Romeo Bishendot, who graduated from Thomas Stone High School. I think there's a memorial, some sort of a brick at the school. I know there's also a few scholarships that his family runs in his honor. So the committee looked at some of those names to see how they were already kind of recognized within the county for their contributions. But that list in its entirety is on our website, as well as the presentation. And, I do want to reiterate what Mr. Sandifer shared. This committee took its time to review every single name on the list, took a vote. We've got minutes from the meeting about what actions were taken on which names. So I think we kind of jumped over this part, but the committee met 5 times. We initially met prior to winter break in December. I really gave an overview of what the renaming policy was, provided the criteria, a lot of documents, kind of a timeline to prepare the committee for its work. And then in January is really when the committee got started in reviewing the names. So do any of you have anything to share? Anything additional? Any of our members back here have anything else to bring forward to share? I'm appreciative that most of our folks could come here this evening, especially one of our student reps. I think it's very important. And the 3 students who were on the committee, just like if you recall the naming process for Thornton Elementary School, we had 3 phenomenal students, and we had 3 phenomenal students this time. So it's always great to take this topic and this work and make sure that, our students have a voice in it as well. So with that, I will close our presentation, open it up to questions for committee members, anything we didn't highlight.
Ms. Jamila Smith?
Well, one, just wanted to say thank you. I don't necessarily have any specific questions. It was a very thorough presentation, so appreciate the walkthrough and the details provided in terms of starting broad, in terms of the landscape and all that you all collected, and how you were able to whittle down to the 3 names that you all are proposing. I know that this is not a paid position. I know that you all have families and jobs and other responsibilities, so I deeply appreciate your efforts in kind of walking through this process and coming up and proposing to us what you all have proposed, especially for our student member, because you also have to go to school. So appreciate your support as well, and your commitment. As one of the District 2 representatives who has kind of Smallwood in their district, we are familiar with the communities in that area, familiar with the school environment, familiar with all that is kind of in that area, and how dedicated, the parents and community members are in that area. So appreciate, again, all that you all have done to bring forth these names.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brenda?
Again, I want to thank you also for all the hard work you've been doing. I'm a lifelong resident, District 2. So I want to kind of maybe do a little bit of research myself also, because I know it's a lot of history there, not necessarily by name, but by geographic. So thank you for all your input, and I'm going to also do some research too. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Kramer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to all the committee members, especially the student, for giving your input. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I echo the sentiments as well. Thank you all for your hard work. I know this was, months, it sounds like, and going through all the submissions. I've also looked at the submissions online, and I echo Ms. Brenda Thomas's sentiments. I will also be doing some research, because just full disclosure, I don't love any of the names. Just being very candid with you all. But I also want to be respectful of your time and of the community members. So if anyone wants to provide further insight, please feel free to email me directly, especially our students and committee members. I'd love to hear from you. But that's open to anyone in the community.
And I do want to quickly plug, because I feel like we said it very quickly during our presentation, this committee is hosting a virtual hearing on Thursday at 6 o'clock. The information, the link to sign up is on our website. The Office of Communications will send out that direct link. We're running it as a Zoom webinar, so we will take comments, feedback within the chat. And if we have some folks who join who want to provide comments on camera, provide their voice to be heard, we will enable that feature as well. But that's this Thursday at 6 o'clock.
And thank you for that, Ms. Mackey. And that's very, very important. We definitely want to hear from the community. All right. All right. Thank you all very much.
you.
Appreciate it. And next up, the one and only Dr. Maria Navarro with an update on the development process for CCPS's strategic plan. And this is for 2025 through 2029.
So good evening, board members. I have a quick verbal update, and I have a one-pager front and back that is attached to this item on the board agenda, but wanted to talk through. So Ms. Morley, you designated a subcommittee of the board that is composed of Ms. Butler-Washington, Ms. Kramer, Ms. Amisha Thomas, and I'm missing Ms. Smith. I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, to work on the strategic plan development. We had a meeting where we talked through the process, and the board members in the subcommittee gave some feedback on the process. And one of the things that they noted was the importance to come back and let the full board know how we're moving forward. So as the board knows, we have a strategic plan that was developed when I first came here. It followed an intensive period of about 4 to 5 months of listening sessions and getting to learn the community, the staff, and the school system. And we then huddled to develop some priorities and some strategies. The one pager that you see in front of you is designated to provide a quick summary of, in the last 4 years, what have we accomplished. Now, I couldn't fit everything, and as Shelley always tells me, that it's already very busy, but it was a way to sort of ground our community on what has been some of the outcomes of the strategic plan. I will tell you that we wanted to use figures, numbers. I like using quantitative data to say what has been the impact. And so in the back of this sheet, you have quantitative data. In the front, you have sort of arrows. Please take a moment. Not every single arrow that's going up means that everything is great. So I do want to acknowledge that it's important that this be a transparent document that really shows the places where we've done great strides, and we have, and the areas where we still need to do work. This document is being used as a grounding document for anybody that wants to give feedback within our community around the strategic plan. And so what we are kicking off this week is a listening and engagement set of sessions. So for the month of March, there will be sessions with multiple the community makeup of our school system. We will be meeting with parents at 2 different occasions. We are meeting with staff at different levels. We have 2 sessions for teachers. We have a session with parents in general. We will be having a session for our specific families of students with disabilities. We have a session for multilingual learning families. And we have an engagement session for students, and all of this stuff will be coming out as Shelley kind of hits go. And then we will be meeting with principals, assistant principals, as I mentioned, 2 teachers sessions, and then we're going to be meeting with student services and staff, and then also with different departments within CCPS. We will also be doing a stakeholder engagement with our elected officials, community partners, PTSO presidents. So I think in total, we have about 14 or 15 engagement sessions. Some of them will be in person, a lot of them will be hybrid, and many of them will be virtual. So we will be rolling out later, I think beginning tomorrow, sort of the FYIs on when can you sign up and how can you come give some feedback. Additionally to that, this document will also be attached to a system-wide survey that will be going out asking, and you'll see in a lot of our social media sites, and also as students log into their system. So when you log in, Sam, sometime later on, in our student information system, it'll prompt students, I believe starting in 4th grade on up, to provide some feedback about the school system. They will be able to see this page, front and back, go through it, and then depending on who they are, a staff member, a student, a community member, a parent, they will take a personalized survey. We will take that survey data and we will analyze those results at a retreat that we will be hosting in April. It is a 2-day retreat. The purpose of that retreat is to gather the data from the survey results that we've gotten through the month of March, and from the listening sessions, the various stakeholder listening and engagement sessions through the month of March, and have a subset of my senior leadership team, the presidents of both of our unions, a set of teachers, and a set of administrators, that will be coming together and to analyze, and then the board members of the subcommittee that will be coming together to analyze the results and begin to develop the next set of priorities for the strategic plan 2025 to 2029. My goal is that in the month of April and into May, we clean that document. We talk about goals, priorities, and then the strategies that will get us to those goals. And between the end of May and the month of June, we come to the board, to the entire board, and present to you all to get your feedback and make any changes or additions that we need to make so that we can roll this plan publicly as our families come back from summer break in August of 2025. So I just wanted to let you know that you will see this week a lot of press release about the engagement, the call to engage several of our community members to be part of these listening and engagement sessions, and to also encourage them to take the survey. And when I say community, people, I mean fellow educators, the bus drivers, the students, the parents, the community partner that does the after-school tutoring program. All of those are part of our communities. And so we are trying to make March a full engagement month. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, and I'll take any questions if the board has any.
All right. Ms. Sarisha Thomas.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro. I really like when we use infographics to show information. I think it's visually and aesthetically pleasing, and it also allows people to take a lot of information and process it quickly. So I do like the way in which it presents on the screen. Being on this committee, I think it's really important that the listening engagement sessions that we really highly encourage the public to attend. And the other thing is, we hear a lot from the public about what they wish or what they like to see or what's important for them. I think the more we engage the public, it'll be more of what Chairwoman Morley said earlier that we learned from Bunkyo University. Is more about a we than an I. And so I think this allows us to have that collaboration with the community. Two groups that I want to make sure we don't forget is CSM. They're probably on the list, but I just want to say it for prosperity's sake.
Thank you.
And also the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
So Ms. Morley and I are on the Chamber of Commerce committee. We've been doing lots of work with them to try to get them to take students and for internships. So I do think that we need to make a special effort to include them. And then the last piece that I'll say is, you talked about surveys for students. I love surveys. I am the survey person. Like, when I was a kid, I remember they used to send these little surveys in the mail, and they put $1 in the envelope to try to get you. My mother would just give them to me, and I'd be like, I got it. I'm filling these out. I actually like surveys. I also like developing survey instruments, so I have done that in the past. But a lot of people don't. You know, if you get 30% response rate, that's considered good, which is terrible, but that's just the way it works. And so we are often used to getting things pushed to our devices, pop-ups, and you're just trying to like click the pop-up, get it out of there, right? Exit out. So I would like to take this opportunity to tell parents to tell their kids, when you see this survey, don't just click out of it. Like, it's your time to use your voice to say what you'd like to see for your education. So just for the public's sake, you know, if you sit down with your kids and that pop-up comes up, or if you're filling out the survey as a parent, take the time to grab your kid, grab their device, and maybe fill it out together, or just talk about the importance of filling out surveys and how it allows you to amplify your voice. So thanks, Dr. Navarro, for that. And I'm really looking forward to the community sessions.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I will say, I don't want to put Sam on the spot, but I think since we decided a couple years ago to push out the SMOB survey, because I know my own kids, I know your kids, you know, get it right on. It didn't used to be that we got it on their devices, that they got it on their Synergy mail or whatever it is that they have to do. We've seen an uptick on student feedback. And the first time that I pushed out surveys, students, I think, were number 2 or number 1 to complete the survey. So I'm excited to get the student survey results, because students, and then I also have a session, and the session that we're doing with students, I don't recall the date, and I don't want to say any wrong dates, because there's a whole bunch of staff that said, do not talk about specific dates because you haven't memorized them, and we have a whole PR campaign going out with the right dates. But it's a virtual meeting, and it's in the evenings, trying to figure out what time most practices are over, and, you know, our kids are super busy, but trying to get that. And so I'm hopeful that we get a lot of student voice, both from the virtual engagement session that I'm having. And most of these sessions, by the way, are done in the evening. As the board knows itself, for its own success with engagement, most of the time we try to do them in the evenings for families, students, and stakeholders, just because that works for people. And if we can also do it virtually, I'll do that. At the end of every session, I will encourage participants that come to the engagement to also complete the survey, because the survey, there's a portion where you can type in more information, and you know, they may have thought of something else. So absolutely, thank you for doing that. And the more that you also help me through your social media of recirculating whatever Shelley puts out, that's helpful to us, to just remind families, like if I'm sitting here waiting for practice to be done, I can easily take it on my device while I'm waiting for my kid, or just a quiet evening at home. Right.
Thank you. Ms. Jamila Smith.
Thank you, Chairwoman Morley. So one, definitely want to applaud you for being invested in reaching out to the community in the ways in which you just presented and shared. I think you and your team have done an amazing job in building that community relationship and making all, whether it be parents or community members, business owners, feel as if they have a place in informing the public education system. So I definitely applaud you in wanting it to be as communal and broad as possible. In terms of student surveys, love that we're going all the way down to 4th grade. I think children need to learn as early as possible that their voice in every way counts, especially when we think about civic engagement, when we think about empowering the next generation. Definitely wanting to hear more from students, and love that it'll be going out via Synergy, so it's easy for them to access. Also in the realm of community engagement, I know Mr. Hancock is on you lead the Community Engagement Committee.
Yes.
So absolutely, I mean, I'm offering up Mr. Hancock, but tag Mr. Hancock in terms of getting out to the community. He is a man of the people, so I know he'll be dying to help.
I mean, right? Just running
there we go.
businesses, but other than that.
No problem, no problem. Again, I know you were a man of the people. So absolutely, those are my points, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Dr. Navarro, thank you for this. And I second Ms. Demetria Thomas. I love these infographic things. The 1-page or 2-pager thing, I'm a big fan of that. I know that the board has been provided with a few of those in the past for our own benefit. The one on the budget was excellent. So I love stuff like this because it's got a lot of quick facts right there, at your fingertips. So definitely kudos to Ms. Mackey or whomever put this together. This is
Totally her.
This is awesome.
Yes.
About the student surveys, I know we had talked about this a couple of years ago. I think it was when the what I'm drawing a blank now. The equity task force was going on, and we first started talking about including students more in terms of more student surveys about interest on things and stuff like that. And I was happy to hear you say that of course we've seen an increase in student feedback. And I know one of the things that, and I can't remember with which survey because we do send out quite a few surveys, but one of the ways in which students had participated, and I think that helped with the participation rate, was they were given time in class or at school, like in homeroom. So just curious if we're going to try that again. I know it's going out to their Synergy, but in case students haven't completed it, and it was quick. It was like they gave them 5 or 10 minutes, but I think that giving them designated time to do it in class where there's nothing else for you to do. This time is designated for you. I think that, if I had to guess, probably really positively impacted those numbers. So just curious if we're going to
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Jones is behind me, and I think he's going to take some notes on that. That's a great suggestion. I hadn't thought about that piece yet, but you're right. We did at some point incentivize, and we can always incentivize schools that have completion rates and let principals know.
Exactly.
Because we can find opportunities for people to just make sure they have taken the survey. And you're right, we have a captain audience, so absolutely the most that we should get is actually from students, because we actually can do that. And you might be thinking also, when we did the surveying for Smallwood, we had a captive audience with students, and so we were able to survey them because we did a presentation, and then they were able to take the survey afterwards.
I think we've done that a few times, because I know there was something else, and there was an email that came to parents and said, hey, talk to your students, there's going to be a survey given to them in class, et cetera. So we've done it a few times, and I definitely think that's a good way to make sure that we get as many, as many students to answer as possible. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro, and I, just like everyone else, I really appreciate this infographic. One thing I'd like to say I think is really working well is the use of social media, because I think the account is focused on CCPS on Instagram, and just as a student, I see it reposted all the time, and I'm going to be honest, especially when there are snow days, everyone's posting the little snow day, this date, and then with a little hey, let's go caption.
Your work does not go unnoticed.
I smile only because Shelley loves getting the responses from our students about what we do with snow days.
Y'all are not so kind.
Really?
Wow.
Another thing is a lot of the times when you post people at events, a lot of people are reposting those posts look, here's me or here's my friend. And I think that's a really positive aspect of community engagement, is when students see themselves on social media or see people that they know, see people that they come across in the halls. It's really positive to just see that, and on platforms that students are using for fun, that no one is forcing them to use, right? Something that they just come across. And I just want to say social media has been something that's been working very well. And I'd like to thank Ms. Mackey and everyone, in the communications department. But to, just please keep focusing on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Smalls and then Ms. Bella Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question about the 2-day retreat for the admin. Would the students be able to join in some way, some form, fashion?
So we are considering, and if we pull students out for a 2-day retreat, it is the analysis of the data that comes back to our sessions. The time of the year when this is happening in April is for high school students. It is packed with AP exams. There's a couple of things going on that week that worked for the adults, but I'm not sure. So I'm thinking through how we could do that. But my hope is that I can get a good showing using Instagram and a couple of places to get the kids to join me for the virtual session, and then complete the surveys. But yes, we've been thinking through, the dates are not perfect because there's a couple of district-wide things that I'm worried that pulling kids out of during that time of the year while there's a lot of testing happening might be problematic, but the sessions that we have in the evenings, there's no perfect day to ask most teenagers if they're not busy, because they're always busy. But we picked a couple of dates, and then we picked an evening time. I think we start at 6 p.m., so we can try to get as many students to partake. And if we need to do a second one, I'm happy to do. I'm out every evening in March, so I do not mind what's another day, and looking at some other times, and I'm happy to sort of think through those pieces. But we might still pull some students out for it. It's just that the dates are not perfect with some testing that's happening at the district. That was my concern.
Thank you. Ms. Bella Washington.
Yes, thank you. I love the infographic also, because if you think about it, it makes people see how far Charles County has came, right? Because you hear all the what people say you don't have, but this graphic really shows everyone that they do have this. They have it here. They have it here. We have grown here, and some of them will even think about, hey, since this may bring it to your attention. Ask your student, did you think about this? Did you think about this? And then engage them like this. So this speaks volume to where Charles County was before and where we at now, and getting parents involved and getting students involved. And students looking at this and say, wow, I didn't know they had this, or I didn't have this. And the parents getting involved and saying, hey, we're gonna go this way. But this shows our strength here. And so that's why I love this graphic. It shows the strength of what we have done for this board and coming before when we do it again and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just have a quick question. This is for Mr. Vert. Each of the schools have like their own pages. You know what I mean? Like kids post, right? Like my kids, they went to a different school, and it was called Club Carol. It was like all the crazy stuff that they were thinking they were hiding it, but you could see like. So I know North Point has one. I know we could post stuff in those pages too, right?
Right.
Because I think that would be really good. It's the underbelly of TikTok that adults not supposed to know about, but it's out there. So I just wanted to. So I just wanted to say, Mr. Vert, that would be a good place to go catch students, and for me, it's not the kids who want to participate, right? Mr. Verk and his friends, I want the kids who are like never submitting surveys, right? That finally have this aha moment and it's like, wait a minute, I can finally say I hate not being able to wear Crocs or whatever the issue is, try to solicit those students who in the past historically have not participated. I would like to see us try to rouse those students.
Yeah, and just so that we don't get into the Crocs conversation again, you can wear Crocs. The only place you cannot is during PE. But I will say that Ms. Kramer's point about doing it during class is a good reminder for me. I hadn't thought about it, so thank you, about doing it during class, because that's when we hear on kids that may not complete the survey. I will also say that I think Mr. Verk is 100% correct. Thank you, by the way, North Point students who helped me create my first story when I went, because you just sit next to a teenager and say, how does Instagram work again? And they help you do that. So I had a couple of students from North Point that helped me out. But they're going, once we get it out to the right population, and I would ask for the help there from our student leaders, they disseminate for us. So they do the work for us. And so I'm excited, because I think the highest response rate we're going to get by far is going to be students, and that's going to be interesting. But we also need to hear from our families. Shelley has made sure that we have translated the materials. That's going to be important as we engage families too, and the right messages. And she has asked, like, if you do a little video in different ways. So we really want to hear this and I'm so glad Ms. Butler Washington cues up. Sometimes even I'm so into the problems of today that I don't stop to figure out how far collectively as a school system we've come. And I just think it's an important reminder of the continual progress that the school system, that the educators, this is the work of 4,000 employees, right? Collectively, this is the work of 4,000 employees, and everything that happens is because somebody makes it happen, not just, you know. So I think it's a great reminder for that, and then it also helps you figure out what did we miss the first time around. And I can't wait to hear from our students, from our staff, from our parents, what did we miss? What are we not focused on that we really need to, and what's the next body of work that we need to engage on? So just exciting times.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Verge.
Just real quick, one point about the in-person thing is that we did something similar with the SMOB election that I got elected in, where a lot of classes in social studies classes, they would show the campaign videos to the classrooms, and it led to some of the highest voter turnout, and there's still a long way to go. But one thing Mr. Winsett wanted to do was have an election day where all of the students would vote on one day, or of course the form would be open for a while, but the teachers on this one day would all tell the students to vote, and they would take time out of class to vote for the SMOB, right? And I think just that's even though we weren't able to do the election day part, it's convincing evidence for when you show students things in front of their face instead of letting them ignore it behind their phone screens, it really leads to a lot of turnout and a lot of response. Thank you.
Thank you. And I definitely, you had something?
I just wanted to piggyback on his point, but
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
No, I love that. I love that. You all know I'm all about civic engagement. And I know just as parents, we have typically taken our children into the voting booth just to show them the process of sort of doing your civic duty. So would love the idea. I mean, of course, I know teachers have to teach and there's a tight schedule. But if there's a way to have voting booths set up, you know, where there's a laptop and you enter your student code or whatever they have to do to kind of get to cast their vote for the SMOB. But if they can kind of mimic the process that we as adults go through, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I definitely very much appreciate Vice Chair Kramer's suggestion about incentivizing students to participate. And, you know, in doing so, we're reminding them that this is your opportunity to be heard. You know what I mean? And don't take that for granted. If there's something, if you want to die on the 4 Chicken Nugget Hill, you know, as an example, whenever you get the opportunity to present such information, you should.
Yeah.
So I think something as crucial as the strategic plan, especially considering when we just came from NSBA Advocacy and Equity Institute, MABE Legislative Day, and they talked so much about the fact that, you know, our one and only customers are the students and how their general engagement and happiness drops significantly as they get older. And, you know, many of them unfortunately grow to dislike school. Not to say you're going to please everyone every time, but I think this would be a great way to bring some of those students back in, to get them engaged again, for them to feel, Kenny, like they have a voice, which to me is very important. And I know I can speak for, you know, my colleagues up here as well. And also just to remind parents as well, you know, we very often will see people take to social media to vent, which is fine. But many times the information that they're looking for is already available. It's already being done. It's already posted. So I think this serves as a good reminder for people and for us to continue to do. I think we've done a wonderful job. Kudos to Ms. Mackey and, you know, the entire team of creating these one-pagers, of generating these incredible graphics. I repost all the time. I don't think you can over-inform people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I really have to say that we've done a very, very phenomenal job, and I can see the growth just from the time we've been on this board with sharing information and just reminding people that everything that's on our agenda, well, not everything, but many things that are on our agenda, we identify, is this part of our strategic plan? Is this data? Just so that we're always bringing it back to what we're here for and to keep it, you know, as, you know, who was this said, keeping the main thing, was that you, Dr. Smalls? Just, you know, always refocusing us to what's important. So thank you, Dr. Navarro.
Thank you.
Very well done. And kudos to the strategic plan subcommittee. Thank you, ladies. All right. I dare say that was our last bit of business for the evening. Look at us ending well. We just have one item, and you all have the folders which have the executive committee minutes from the January 14th, 2025 executive session. They were not ready previously, so that's why we're voting on them tonight. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Seconded by I saw Ms. Samisha Thomas first. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Ms. Brenda Thomas? Is there a second? Second. All right, multiple seconds. I saw Ms. Jamila Smith first. Assuming there's no discussion, we are adjourned at 7:03. Please take us off the air.